Here's what's coming up on the Cold Popcast.
Don't you snatch that from her. Don't do that again. Yeah, knock it down.
You did something slightly wrong. I mean, she was clearly like, okay, it's a little girl. She's in the wrong. She snatched the toy away. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, does that mean that now she shouldn't be able to like just get over it and have fun? And I think this situation could have been leveraged as an opportunity for that parent to teach her daughter, like, well, okay, now go to her and ask her to apologize.
Yeah, like here's how you stand up for yourself. Not become the monster. What's poppin', everybody?
Welcome back to the Cold Popcast.
I'm Zoe.
And I'm Steve.
And today we're going to talk about the Black culture's influence on children, both parenting and just generally like the schools and stuff and how they attribute to the raising of our kids.
Yeah, so a lot of people would probably say that Black culture has a lot of magnificent things about it, but there are some really poisonous downsides that have a negative impact on children, future generations, and even adults. So we're going to watch this first video where I would say that this is the example that you wouldn't want to set as a Black parent with Black children.
Don't you snatch that from her. Don't do that again. Yeah, knock it down. Tear it up.
Pause it real quick.
Yep, and step.
So basically, this little white girl snatched something away from the little Black girl, but then the parent returns that by telling her child to just start pretty much harassing the little white girl.
yeah, go ahead and knock down all her stuff.
Yeah, make sure she knows, make sure she pays for that.
Yeah.
Basically, eye for an eye.
Yeah, essentially. And then I guess watch the escalation, because this is, I think, where it goes a little bit too far.
Step on it. And Karen's just gonna have to deal with it. The fuck? Yep, knock all of it down. Good girl. Very good, Naoki. And grab it and tear it up. Oh well. Tear it up again. Don't put your hands on her. Don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
so she's basically just like raising her kid to be a little more ignorant.
She's literally going to raise her daughter to be like that woman at a McDonald's that gets the wrong receipt or gets like the wrong food, and then she just starts jumping over the counter and knocking things down.
Yeah. like she's at Starbucks throwing hot coffee on people because they got her order wrong.
Yeah, like every fast food fight that happens, that's what she's basically raising.
Yeah, and I think so this is obviously not all Black families are like this, not all Black culture is like this, but I feel like there's a big through line that you can see where it's like in the Black community, we're often willing to return aggression with aggression rather than turning the other cheek, I guess.
Yeah, it's like rarely, like you said, a measured, rational response. And, this was prompted because, she saw the girl take the toy away from her daughter. And it's one thing to kind of be like, to have a response where maybe you lecture the other girl or, kind of give her like, I guess a measure equal response. Like if you're just like, don't let her take that from you again. Or if she takes it, go ahead and snatch it back from her. Something measured, I guess, would maybe be more appropriate. Like I can understand that. But I guess where she's like basically just instructing her daughter to bully this girl now, and leaving no room for retaliation because now she's there watching her saying, don't you touch my daughter. Like, you basically just sit there and let this happen. Right. She's the only adult in the room. I'm like, I think you're not giving like the proper lesson. You're basically saying like, you should measure any level, basically like you said, the eye for an eye. Any type of retaliation should be met with like just her overdoing it essentially.
Yeah, and I think it's like unfair because basically that little white girl, the
little Karen.
That little Karen. she's being basically double teamed by an adult woman and her daughter.
Yeah, that's the messed up part. I'm like, because you're basically like being double teamed. Like she can't do anything. Like okay, now I got this grown woman. Basically, I can't do anything about this.
Right. She's just trying to play and be a child, but then it's become like this adult dynamic where it's like, oh, you you did something slightly wrong. I mean, she was clearly like, okay, it's a little girl, she's in the wrong, she snatched the toy away. But at the same time, does that mean that now she shouldn't be able to like just get over it and have fun?
Yeah, because
Like,
you don't. You probably wouldn't even tell it was like that malicious. Because the one girl looks like she's a little bit older, so they were probably like setting something up, and I guess the little girl was probably getting in the way. So he's like, "No, we're gonna use that," and but that's just like my assessment. But not to make it right or wrong, but like
it's silly. It's clearly like the spite is coming from the mother.
Mm-hmm.
So the mother is probably upset at the situation, but she's taking that out on the kid. And by doing so, teaching the kid that that's okay is, to mess with other people because her mama told her to.
Yeah, and to be honest, my kind of like assessment of what's really happening is like this isn't really about the kids. This is like her mom, like kind of
Her
vicariously, she's vicariously living through her daughter. Like I can kind of assess to some extent, like this mom doesn't really like white women or white people, and so like. That little Karen right now in that little fake Starbucks is like a vicarious representation of like the white structure that's like kept her down her whole life and made her a single mom. And so she's like using her daughter as like an extension of her to basically fight the system, to take one out on the white girl one last time.
she's taking out the fucking the matriarchy, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. she's really taking like that's her way of doing it. And I'm like, I think that's the messed up part because, like I said, this isn't about her daughter. She doesn't care if she's like, subconsciously instilling bad traits into her daughter from this. She's just like, keep hitting her, and he's calling the little girl names like you little Karen.
It's kind of like
it's so common though.
It's kind of like those situations where like for example, if I've heard of this happening before. Of course, it never happened to me, but like if you have a son. And then the father says, like, if anyone hits you, then hit them back. Right. That's cool. Like, hit them back. Mm-hmm. But if the father were to say, like, okay, now keep beating him until he's passed out, it's like, it's okay for you to say, like, okay, my son, that's teaching like a moral lesson. Like, they hit you, you need to protect yourself, you need to defend yourself. But for the father to like sit there rooting him on, like, knock him out, get on the ground and pound him. Like, that's when it goes too far. And I think this situation could have been leveraged as an opportunity for that parent to teach her daughter, like, well, okay, now go to her and ask her to apologize. Yeah,
like here's how you stand up for yourself. Not here's like not become the monster.
Yeah, But I think it's just a complete lack of like emotional control, emotional stability that the parent would even do this. And she's teaching that. She's basically passing it on to her daughter, which is actually pretty sad.
I agree.
But yeah, there's also another video that we have that is on the topic of like black culture and its effect on kids. This video, some people have like differing opinions, so I feel like it's like slightly controversial. Yeah. But we can go ahead and watch it and see what we think.
Yeah.
When you see me, tell you gotta say what's good. Wanna be on my restaurant, it's my good. We be living, learning, and we turn it up. Welcome to your desk, hold it up. When I holler me, tell that me turn up. Read it every day and get that scores up. On my way to success, it ain't no love. So it's case, so it's up, then it's up.
So my opinion on this is just that those kids should not know what that song is.
They
should have no exposure.
They don't know
it.
the song, but they know that word ski yee.
I feel like they know the song.
They've heard it.
What
That's why
is
they're.
it? Ain't it like it seemed like something that's specific for that classroom?
No,
No, that's a
part of
sexy red.
song.
That's a sexy red song.
Oh,
Obviously,
wow.
obviously they.
They might not.
No,
that changed the game. What's going on?
So obviously they changed the lyrics so that it would be like appropriate for school. They're talking about we gonna get them books and learn ski, but like they obviously have the reference point of the actual song, or else this wouldn't be relevant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and that's I think that's the thing because it's like there's like you. I don't think you shouldn't be using like things that are too explicit for kids to like either fully grasp the concept of or something that like is rooted in like a negative part of the culture, a more explicit part of the culture that kids shouldn't really have exposure to, and like bring that into the learning environment because it's like you said, the only reason the kids would know this is because they've heard the song. Whether they know what it means, they've heard it, and this is like subliminally instilling in them like a level of like positive association to the song.
Right.
So like I think that in itself kind of creates a dynamic to where like we start to glorify or idolize these negative things because now these kids are probably going to hear it on the radio and it's not going to appear to be something that is socially unacceptable or something that you should bring into like the professional aspects of your life.
That's one of the main issues in like black parenting is that by itself. Like not drawing distinctions between what is acceptable and what is not acceptable for your child to consume and, like believe in.
It's like if
There's
I
no
like
barrier.
it, if I like it, my kids should like it too.
Yeah.
And then it's just the idea of assessing, like, the appropriate level. Because I can see, like, the argument that will probably be levered against it, like, or levered in for it, where it's like, well, it's not like they're taking the song verbatim and it's being twisted to be more educational, but
the kids bopifying it.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also kind of like, why do we need to take that part of it? Because I feel like maybe not the best comparison, but like, that's like if you remember those images, those meme images where they would take like a scene from a porn and they draw over it so that it looks like something else. Like it's like a girl just eating a banana. Yeah. It's like, what if you like, I don't know but like you have to understand the context of it to get the joke. It's like, would that be acceptable to have like posters of stuff like that around the school? That's like, you have the girl eating a banana, like eat your vegetables, and it's clearly a porn star. It's like, would that be acceptable to have in a classroom and be like, well, it's not the real thing, but it's funny because we all know the reference.
Right. You take adult content and then you remove all the adult themes, but it's still at the end of the day, it's based in adult content.
Yeah.
So, you shouldn't probably have it around kids.
Exactly.
Yeah. Keeping the child innocent. So I feel like that's something that the Black community doesn't like understand, that's very important.
Mm-hmm. One reference that I have from this is like basically when I was growing up, you know the song "Rock the Boat," like "Rock the Boat, Rock the Boat." That song's about sex. And like I used to think about it, like I used to hear it all the time, and I used to like be in the car singing it and stuff, like right, because it was just like a really smooth little song. And I remember when someone told me, I think it was my mom, was like, no, probably not my mom. She wouldn't have ever talked about sex with me, but I remember like. Somebody told me that song was about sex, and then it just like created a whole different context. Like, man, I really like that song.
I was thinking,
and then I started thinking about it. And
I was thinking Missy Elliott as a kid.
Yeah,
exposed to everything. Change positions.
You know what's really funny?
Change positions. So
but you don't even know what. But
what is a position? You don't know, a child. Like maybe she just turned around. maybe she just went to the front of the boat.
Right, you're right.
Oh, actually, that's hilarious. You said that because I forget who sang it. It was like, don't rock the boat, baby. Who sang that one?
Yeah, I know that song.
Yeah. It's funny because I didn't have context as a kid for like euphemism, so I thought the song was about like them being on a ship, and he's like, don't actually knock the boat over. And I was like, oh, they're talking about relationships. Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
Yeah.
But
I think the same thing I have for a James Brown song where it's like sugar pie, honey bunch, and I thought he was talking about food. Like he was really getting off to the food. No, sugar pie. Nope, it's not the pie you're thinking of.
Oh, it's not the bright pie.
So what do you guys think, man? How do you think that as a parent, eventually, none of us are parents, but like when we do have kids, how do you think you can sort of subvert this sort of like inoculation into the Black culture? Like obviously we're Black, we want to be a part of the culture, but how do you avoid letting it affect your kids in a negative way?
You know what? I think it's because you can't stop it all. I think as you grow up, like 50% of their exposure is going to be outside of your control because they're going to go to schools. They're going to have access to social media more than we ever had. So you're getting another level of influence. I think the best thing you do is try to probably limit. I think people do need to actually limit their a child's exposure because like even adults get corrupted by social media. Like I think it's a very addictive thing, and I think even though it sounds like very boomer-ish to be like, oh, don't get on the computer, it's dangerous. It's like to some extent you got to have some boundaries because their limit is going to be their imagination, and they're still developing, so they're going to be exposed to things that will probably be best for them not to know at the age that they are. So I think that's one thing is maybe limit their definitely limit their exposure to some parts of social media. And also just trying to, I guess, put yourself in a region around like well-adjusted adults. Because, there's going to be a lot of adults out there that are going to have some level of influence over your kids, like teachers or like other parents that are, going to be, watching, or they're going to be in places where you're at. And, they're going to have to interact with, you're going to have to, like, if you have a dumb parent, your kid's going to have to interact with their dumb kid.
Right.
And so, that dumb kid's going to have some level of influence over what your kid thinks too. And so, like I said, I think it's very important to make sure you're around other adults that are measured because like they're going to contribute to the community you have to live in.
Right.
And so you don't want to be in that situation to where now your daughter's being bullied by some other girl and that girl's mom you know, because that mom is like, you know, immature in herself.
Yeah.
You know, she has her own level of underdevelopment.
Yeah, like me and Roosevelt joke around all the time. Like, you know, he always says his kid's gonna like beat my kid's ass. But like to seriously actually like advise something like that is insane. To actually have like your kids like you're using your kid as like a weapon against another child.
Yeah.
It's like crazy.
I mean, that's like some Karate Kid stuff where like the sensei, he's like, you know, sweep the leg. He's like, but sensei, sweep the leg. You know, just do it.
Do it.
You know, this isn't about the competition. This is about this man living out his karate dreams in high school. You know, I don't want to be around that dad who's like, you know, having my son get pushed around on the football field because he never made it to the league.
Yeah.
I feel like you should expose your kids to the things that, you know, exist in the culture and everything, but educate them on like the pros and cons and not going down that rabbit hole. You feel me?
Yeah.
Like going down that path, basically.
I agree. Yeah.
It's kind of like if you're watching an anime and the character's like, yes, I consumed poison for 20 years and now I'm immune to poison.
Yeah,
It's
I've been
like,
practicing holding my breath for 5 minutes at a time.
yeah, it's kind of like that where they just need a little bit so they can know why it's bad, but you have to reinforce it with education so they can also be like, I know why this is bad. It's not just bad because my parents tell me it's bad. It's bad because it's actually bad for me.
Yeah. And messages need to be conveyed based on how you think the child is developing. Mm-hmm. So if you think a child is mentally ready for, you know, certain concepts or whatever, then that's when you tell them about, like, you know, like sex education or something like that.
Yeah.
But there's often not enough barriers, like I said, in the black community, like keeping your kids innocent. Usually a lot of black people have to have their kids more educated or more exposed to like violence and all that other like terrible, you know, crap like drugs and all that. Uh-huh. That's pretty integrated in some people's families. Like they'll teach their kids how to do this type of stuff, and they'll let them be around them in certain scenarios. But it's like you're ruining that kid's entire outlook on the world itself. So it's like, if we don't create barriers, then they're just gonna be a bunch of crazy baby kids running around, stealing cars like they're doing now,
Stealing cars and making
out of
TikToks.
control. Yeah.
And then the last thing I want to add too is like you don't want to do the other extreme where you shelter your kid too much. I don't think
That
you want
part
to do
too,
that.
yeah.
Like, you know, there's some things you just got to get exposed to learn. So it's like when I say the whole like internet thing, I'm like, you know, just like I don't think if you can keep your 4-year-old away from porn, then, you know, I think that's reasonable, you know, but like they probably are going to see like episodes of a mature TV show circling around, and that's fine. You know, that happens. So I think the same thing is like, you know, you like put them in social things, you know, teach them practical skills, give them practical experience, like make them go to a park, you know, put them in a school. You know, they're gonna have to learn how to interact with kids and stuff, because if you go too far one way to realize I'm just gonna keep my kid home and I'm just gonna download my thoughts into him and then put him out in the real world and realize now everything operates the way it did in your house, it's gonna also be jarring. So I think you got to have like that balance. So make sure it's like you put them in social things, but you know, if anything, just keep them away from like crazy adults, you know, things he can't control in that aspect. Because like I said, it's one thing to have them interact with kids their age where they have some type of leverage, but you put them in a, like, you know, a teacher like this, you know, and they have to learn these things now, whether they want to or not, whether it's good for them or not. I think that's the thing you have to be the most concerned about. You know, what kind of adults are your kids being around? You know, don't put them in like the church with the, you know, the pastor that's like a little too handsy, you know, stuff like that. Because, you know, control for those things, and I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, I agree, man. Definitely not the handsy pastor.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad. Well, I feel like that's probably a good place to close out, man. Thanks for watching, everybody. So you can actually follow the Cold Podcast on social media at The Cold Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all places where you can find audio and video, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe, follow, like, and leave a comment and let us know how you feel about the episode. How are you going to raise your kids if you're a black parent? If you're a white parent, if you're any race of parent, how do you think you can avoid letting poisonous culture affect your children? Please leave a comment and let us know. Also, so in terms of our Patreon, you can follow us on Patreon. $5 a month gets you access to all of our exclusive content, including 80 episodes of the My Black Friends podcast. Anyway, so thanks for popping in. We got to pop out of here.
All right. Peace.